Hi, everybody. It's Mike from Here the Watchman. I am like so excited this morning. I mean, I have a guy on the show today whose entire life turned around once he got baptized at the Here the Watchman conference in Dallas. And I got to tell you, it's like amazing, folks, to hear these stories and hear these testimonies. Because as I have shared before with some of you on this channel, you know, a long time ago, I was homeless, I was in jail, I was a heroin addict, smoked it, of course, didn't shoot it, which back then I thought was like, oh, I'm not a junkie. Uh, but Jesus saved me. He turned my life around once I repented on the floor of a jailroom cell. And the rest is history. He's asked me to work for him and do what I do today. But today I've got a guy, David SCARBERRY. He hails out of Plano, Texas, and he's going to join us today to share his testimony. David, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. I appreciate you letting me come on and share my story, share what Jesus has done in my life.
Well, David, talk to us a little bit about that. What happened? You came to the Hear the Watchman conference and you had some issues. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I thought it was 3 years ago, but looking back, I guess it was just 2 years ago that I was delivered from a lifetime of drugs. And so this got me, of course, excited and got me into my Bible. And I started reading the Bible, and I didn't get very far when I got to the Israelites coming out of Egypt, and I was just blown away. I thought, man, and I was asking God, are these the dumbest people that you've ever created? I mean, all the plagues, all the miracles, they literally walked through the Red Sea on dry ground. And then you read a couple of paragraphs later, and they're right back to their pagan worship or their Baal worship or whatever. And at this point, Mike, the only miracle that I knew I had was I had been delivered from drugs and alcohol a year or two earlier. And so I was asking God, trying to help me understand how these people could be so stupid. And man, it was just like He opened my mind and He let me see my whole life, where throughout my life He has done Red Sea type party miracles since an early age. So this is what I like to call my own personal Exodus experience, if you will, or my 35 years of wandering in the wilderness. And it started when I was 11 years old. I did my first line of cocaine when I was 11 years old. And I like to call that my gateway drug because, from there, from cocaine, I went to pot, and alcohol, and eventually harder things, heroin, meth, mushrooms, acid, ecstasy, you name it. I've done it, and I've probably abused it. But I wasn't an all-day, everyday type of user. I was a weekend warrior nights, and so I took care of my stuff, in other words. I graduated from high school. I remember back in high school, people asking me, how do you party harder than anybody and still make good grades? And to me, it was very simple. I didn't go to school high. I got high after school. But anyway, so I graduated high school. I graduated college. Went to Oklahoma State University. I actually studied in London, England, at London School of Economics, International Economics, and graduated with a bachelor's degree and moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, and became a mortgage banker. Things were going good. I was very successful. I was making a name for myself. And then along came crystal meth. And that was the first time in my life that I started becoming an all-day, everyday type of a user. I was a functioning addict, but eventually it caught up with me, and I ended up losing my my job. I got fired from my job because I was a meth addict. So I opened my own mortgage company. And again, I was a functioning addict, did very well. I had, a plaque on my wall, Certificate of Excellence Award, personally given to me from the mayor of Tulsa. There were months that I brought home $20,000 or more. So on the outside looking in, I appeared to be very successful. But what most people didn't know about me is I was a meth addict, and I was an all-day, everyday user. And I remember even back then praying and asking God, can you please deliver me from this meth? Because I had tried and tried with no luck, and it just had me. Well, on January 18th of 2001, the SWAT team kicked my door in and raided my house and threw me in jail. And I was all over the news in Tulsa for 2 solid weeks. They had me as the largest manufacturer and distributor of GHB in the entire state. This is my first offense, but they're trying to give me a life sentence. So I fought this for a couple years, and I still ended up with a 15-year sentence. So off to prison I go. One day I'm suit and tie, next day I'm shackles and chains. And I'm not ashamed to admit this. One of the scariest days of my life, bar none, was stepping off that prison bus, getting up, coming to that prison yard, and there was about 2,000 inmates out there, and man, you could hear a pin drop because they all stopped and they're watching the fresh meat, which was me and some other guys getting off the bus. But nonetheless, I was in prison. Not much you can do about it except get into the life once you're there. And I remember one day, Mike, I was walking to laundry, and I was carrying my prison grays, and I was looking up at the razor wire, how the sun was reflecting off the razor wire, and I just said, God, when I was asking you to deliver me from meth, I was thinking more along the lines of a 12-step program. This is not what I had in mind. But nonetheless, God had his hand on me in prison. I'm reminded of Joseph being sold into slavery, and the Bible says he was blessed. Well, I was blessed in prison, and God opened doors for me. And the first door that he opened for me was getting me a job in laundry on a sewing machine, believe it or not. And so when you get to prison where I was at, you clean for 8 hours a day until you get a job, and sometimes getting a job, it might take 2 or 3 months. So it's horrible, cleaning 8 hours a day, just nothing but, doing the same thing over and over. So one day somebody walks around, and he was walking around asking people, "Hey, do you know how to sew?" And I'm like, "Why?" And he's like, "Well, one of the sewing machine guys that run the sewing machine, they're getting sent home today, and so there's an opening." I said, "Oh yeah, I know how to sew." Man, I didn't know how to sew. I had never sewed in my life, but I didn't want to clean 8 hours a day anymore. And my dad and my brother, now they both did upholstery, so I had seen them sew. I didn't know how to sew, but I had seen what it looks like, right? So I go over to laundry, and there was an empty sewing machine sitting there, and then a guy on the next sewing machine sitting there. And the guy said, "Just sit down there and wait for your interview." So I sat down, and the guy next to me, and I said, what's going to happen? How do I get this job? And he said, "Oh, he's going to come out and make sure you know how to run the sewing machine." I'm like, "Oh man, it's been a while. Can you tell me how to turn this thing on?" So he reaches over and turns the machine on for me, and then I sit there for a minute, and then I said, "I don't know if I've ran this particular model before. Can you show me a stitch or two?" So he shows me a stitch or two. I mean, minutes before I get interviewed, I completely bluffed my way into this job, but I got the job, and I started sewing in the laundry room on the prison yard. And this led to me, because I'd seen my dad and brother do upholstery, after I had many months of sewing experience, I came up with the great idea that, hey, they were going to buy new mattresses for the yard and pillows. I said, let's just recover them. So I ended up recovering like 3,000 mattresses, 3,000 pillows, and all the workout equipment on the yard. This landed my picture on the front page of the city newspaper, and the caption reads, "Inmate saves Department of Correction $3,800. So, and this goes into my permanent file. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, right? So that was the first door God opened for me. Other things is that, I was the only inmate in prison that had a college degree. So I started tutoring guys. I started teaching them, some of them to read, write, some of them to get their GED. I was a Narcotics Anonymous facilitator. Me and one other guy started a prayer circle. It was just he and I. And by the time I left, there were 48 hardened criminals standing in a circle holding hands, praying to God before we went to bed every night. And all these things, they went into my file and in my permanent jacket. So just shy of a year in prison, I was called back to Tulsa to go before the judge. They call it a judicial review. And as I stood before the judge, she said, "Mr. Scarberry, I have read through your file and never in all my years ever seen anything that comes close to this. And because of that, I'm going to suspend the remaining balance of your sentence. However, if you get caught so much as jaywalking, you're coming back to prison for the full 15 years from day one." So I got to go home from prison with a 15-year sentence after just shy of a year of doing my time. So, wow. Yeah.
Praise Jesus, man. That's amazing.
No kidding. Yes. So I get out of prison within 2 years, and now I'm a convicted felon, remember. within 2 years, I get sole full custody of my 3-year-old son, and I land a killer job in Dallas, Texas. So I pack up me and my son, and we moved to Texas. I moved to Dallas. Things were going good. I was setting sales records at my company. Third person in the company history to ever hit this certain sales goal they told me I needed to shoot for when I started. When I hit it, they're like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you've made it. You're only third person ever." Anyway, things were going good, but I got that itch. If you're an ex-heroin addict, you know the itch you get. And I didn't go back straight out to the street and start doing the hard drugs, but I went to a doctor instead. And, I got pain pills, and I got muscle relaxers, and then I started getting Adderall. And then one doctor became 2 doctors, and 2 became 3 and 4 and 5 doctors. And so I was a full-fledged functioning addict again. But in my mind, it's kind of like you with the needle. In my mind, it was okay because it was legal, because I have prescriptions for it, right? So besides being an addict again, things were going good, and I decided it was time to buy my son and I a house. And so I had looked at several houses, and I was praying about the house because I wanted to make sure I bought the right house in the right neighborhood to raise my son in. And I remember growing up, Mike, talking to my mom as a little kid saying, "Mom, why won't God just give me a real answer? Why won't he write me a letter and send it to me in the mail, or send me a text message, or just audibly say, 'David, this is what I want you to do'?" Well, I got one of those answers on this house. I'll never forget it. I had visions of the house, and I'm nobody. I mean, who might have visions, but I'll never forget it. I was at work one day, and I would be standing at the coffee pot or at the water fountain, and I just would start daydreaming for 10, 15 minutes at a time, just living in this house. Nothing special, just walking through the house, mowing the lawn, and it was this specific house. It took all day of this happening, and I realized, oh my, that I got an answer. I actually got an answer. I had visions. Oh my God. So I called my realtor, and I said, "Man, the house in Allen, Texas, that's my house. I prayed to God. He gave me an answer, and I want that house." He said, "Okay, you want me to put in an offer?" I said, "Yes, I do." And they were selling it for $135,000. I told him I want to offer $119,000. He said, "That's kind of low." I said, "Well, I can always go up, but I can't go down, right?" So about a week later, he calls me, and I said, "Did I get the house?" He said, No, you didn't get the house. In fact, not only did you not get it, but you offended them because of your low offer." He said they actually had 7 people that offered more than you did, and they sold it. And I went, "What?" I got an answer. I had a vision, and so I was just scratching my head, and he said, "Man, I'll set up some more houses this weekend to look at." And I said, "No, I'm not looking at any other houses. Didn't you hear me? I told you I prayed to God. I got an answer, and that's my house." He said, "Yeah, but didn't you hear me tell you that they sold that house?" So I was confused. I was discouraged, but I wasn't going to go look at any more houses. So I just started working again, and it must have been 3-4 weeks later. I had forgot about looking at houses, and my secretary rang me. She said, "I've got a Mr. Watkins on the phone." That was my realtor. And so I pick up the phone, and I said, "How did I get it, man?" And he said, "Dude, you are not going to believe this." I said, "Yes, I will. Just tell me how I got my house." He said, I think the financing fell through. I'm not for sure exactly what happened, but I do know that the seller went from being mad and offended at you to specifically saying, "We want to sell our house to that single dad and his young boy." So I got my house.
Amen.
Yeah. Woo! 2 months after I bought the house, I lost my corporate job because I was a drug addict, right? Because I'm popping all these pills, and I just, you can.
It happens. I mean, isn't it funny that it happens?
That's right. That's right. It catches up with you. So I lose my job. This is in 2008 after the housing market crash. So I couldn't get a job in mortgage. And for 6 months I looked. I have a new house payment, my son to raise, and no job. And after about 6 months, my dad gave me a sewing machine, and he said, "Well, you can do upholstery." And I was like, "Yeah, man, thanks, but no thanks," right? But I was getting desperate. So, I mean, I was in the line at the food pantry. I mean, I was out of money. So I decided, well, I've started a mortgage company before. And I got this sewing machine, so I would spend half of a day trying to generate mortgage loan leads and half of a day trying to generate upholstery leads. And after a month, I had 2-3 pages of possible upholstery jobs. I didn't have one single loan application for mortgages. So I opened up an upholstery company. And that's what I do today. I still have an upholstery company. So I literally went to prison to get trained for what I do today for a living.
That's how God works, brother.
Isn't it? I mean, like crazy. I know. I look back on it and just like, wow, you had a plan. And upholstery was, I mean, I ran from that my whole life. I didn't want to do what my dad and my brother did, but here I am. Anyway, so I opened up an upholstery company. I'm mainly doing boat upholstery, and things are going good. And then we have a 3-year drought in Dallas. So the boat business dried up, and I had to start doing furniture upholstery. And I was struggling. I mean, yeah, I think people brought back more chairs and I had to redo them than people that were happy. But anyway, the time was going on, and I was trying to, and this guy came along needing a job, and he had 25 years doing furniture upholstery experience. So I hired him right away. Well, he brought a little baggage with him. He was also a meth addict. And so it wasn't probably 2-3 weeks, and I'm back in the saddle again. And, yeah, I was still doing all the pain pills and all the Adderall and everything, but on top of that, I started doing meth as well. And this little stint went 5 or 6 years, this binge. And I was raising my son at the time as well. And, man, it got bad. I mean, the first few years wasn't bad, you know, functioning addict, as I've mentioned many times, but then I got where I couldn't function. And it got so bad, Mike, that there was many months, I can't tell you how many times my electric got turned off. And there were several months that my son and I, after work, we would gather up all the 5-gallon buckets that we could find, and we would go to the gas station and fill them up with water, and that's what we bathed out of, and that's what we flushed our toilets with. And yeah, it got pretty low. Then the summer came around. My son was on summer break, so one year I let him go spend a month with his mom. And that went well. So the next year, I let him go again for a month. Only this time, she didn't let him come back, and because everybody knew how strung out I was. And so I lost my son, and I didn't even fight it because I couldn't even take care of myself. I mean, I couldn't keep my water, my electric on. And I mean, my son, that's the only person I've ever loved more than myself in my whole life, and I lost him. So I had to get clean. So I told the guy that working for me that was the meth addict, I said, man, you can still work for me, but you can't work in my shop because I can't be around the meth. I can't be around it. You've got to get your own shop, and I'll still let you work for me. So he moves out, and I actually managed to get myself clean for a month or two. And then I got real lonely because, you know, I had burnt all the bridges I had with my family. I was barely speaking to any of them. My neighbors wouldn't talk to me because I was a meth addict. I mean, I had a lot of traffic at my house. I'd be out in the driveway at 3 or 4 in the morning with the angle grinder, you know, grinding bumpers off of cars or whatever, you know. All of my friends were drug addicts, and I wasn't associating with them because I was trying to get myself clean. And I felt like the only friends I had were my dog and my TV. And I remember saying a prayer to God, and I didn't believe that he could. I don't know why I didn't believe. I wasn't joking, but I didn't believe the prayer at the same time. I just said, God, if this TV is the only friend that you're going to allow me to have, can you please somehow make that a blessing? And I said that prayer with doubt, because how are you going to make a TV a blessing? Within 3 days, I figured out how to put YouTube on my TV, and so I'd sit in my shop, work all day, and listen to YouTube, and man, I found everything. I was blown away. I found everything from Alex Jones to Flat Earth, and then all these preachers, and these preachers told stories that I never heard the Bible like this before. I mean, there was fallen angels and giants and talking donkeys and demons, and it was better than any Marvel movie or comic book I'd ever heard. And I got so into these preachers, and I would work and listen to preachers all day long. And then some of them started talking about this conference coming up in Dallas, here, the Watchmen conference. And as I listened to these preachers, and then I heard more about this conference, I just felt drawn to go to this conference. I don't know why. I just felt like I needed to. And I thought, man, I can't afford tickets to that. But the more I watched, the more I listened, I just had this conviction I need to go to this conference. So I scraped up the money, and I got the tickets, and bought the tickets. And then that same month, my buddy who's doing my work for me, that's a meth addict, you know, he gets kicked out of his shop, right? Because he's a meth addict. So he's got all these jobs of mine, but nowhere to do them. So he has to move back into my shop to do them. And I was back in the saddle again. That addiction, it's kind of like I like to describe it like an old jacket, one of those old leather bomber jackets or whatever that you had for 30 years and it should have been thrown away 20 years ago, but it's ugly, it doesn't look good, but it's comfortable. Man, I fell right back into that drug addiction. And I went to a new low. And it was different this time because I had a couple of months clean before he moved back in with the goal of getting my son back. And I remember before this period when I would drive to the drug house, I'd get, a little giddy with excitement, because I'm going to get drugs, I'm going to get high. And this time it changed, man. I would be crying, bawling, tears running down my face, and me yelling to God, why can't you take this from me? I hate who I am. I don't like who I am. I'm letting myself down. I'm letting my son down. I have no control over this. And this is how I live. This was when my buddy moved back in was around November, and the conference was in March. And so those 6 months, 3, 4, 5, 6 months, whatever, man, I got so strung out, I didn't know what day it was most days. And so I must have written down the date of the conference on the calendar or something, because I still to this day can't figure out how I figured out when the conference was, because I was, out there. So anyway, I figured out the conference is this coming weekend or whatever it was. And so I decided, and before I went, when I figured out the conference was coming up, the devil speaking to me, I was like, in my mind, I was just telling myself, why would you go to a Bible conference? I mean, you're a drug addict, you're a meth addict. What business do you have going to a Bible conference? I mean, why are you going? But then I remember how broke I was when I bought the tickets, and I remembered I felt so impressed to get the tickets that some reason I went ahead and bought it, and that's the only reason I went. I thought, man, I need to go at least check this out and see why I paid money for tickets to go see some preachers, right? So it was a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I'd get up in the morning and I'd hit that meth pipe and get as high as I could, and it's about a 45-minute drive to Grapevine, and I'd drive out there and I'd sit and listen at the conference until I couldn't stay awake anymore, maybe half the day or 3/4 a day. And then, and then I would drive home and I'd sit in front of my computer and watch the rest on live stream as I'm hitting the meth pipe. So that's how I watched the conference. And they started talking about baptisms, and I thought, baptism, maybe that's why I'm supposed to be at the conference. And no, surely not. I got baptized when I was a kid, and I kept listening to the conference. I kept hearing about these baptisms, and I thought, man, maybe this is why I'm here. So, I called my dad for advice. My dad was a preacher, and I asked him, man, I think about getting baptized again. And he said, you don't really need to. You got baptized when you were 8. You don't need to do it again. So I said, all right, well, I guess that's not why I was supposed to go to the conference. And I don't know. I just had this battle going on. I had this battle of, you don't need to get baptized, and this hope that I had that maybe this is why I'm here. So Saturday, I listened to the conference as long as I could, drove home, started hitting my meth pipe, and I'd probably stay up till 4 or 5 in the morning Saturday night smoking meth. And so, of course, Sunday morning, I woke up late, and when I got up, I was mad and discouraged because I've missed it, right? And then then that hope popped up, and I thought, no, let's try it. Let's go. Maybe we can make it. So I got high, went to the conference, and when I got there, I had missed all the morning services. They were already baptizing people, and I thought, man, I'm too late. And then that hope came in. This hope was just an overwhelming. I had to figure it out. I had to go do it and see if maybe this is why I was here. So the line was short. By the time I got changed and got in line, but I got in line and I went down into the waters of baptism. And I remember telling Pastor BEGLEY, I told him, man, can you hold me under the water a little while longer? Because I want to make sure that I'm clean, right? And, he looked at me, he said, you got it, brother. But I don't know. And I don't know if he held me under longer or not. But when I got baptized and when I came out of the waters of baptism, I don't know what I was expecting, but nothing happened. I mean, I was kind of expecting a light to shine down from heaven, or God to say, behold, this is my son David, I'm well pleased, something. But nothing happened, Mike. And I was kind of embarrassed because nothing happened. Nothing except from the day that I got baptized till today that I'm speaking to you. I've never touched meth again. My son moved home 6 months later after I got baptized. My relationships with my family and my neighbors are restored and better than they were before. My business is exploding. I've got a hunger for the Word. I've read the entire Bible since I got baptized. I'm starting on it again. I've got a hunger for God's Word and a desire to share my story. And and I appreciate you letting me come on and share it with you today.
Well, praise Jesus. I mean, all power, all gratitude goes to him. We have a very,
Yes.
very similar story. You
Yep.
know, and so folks, I want you to know when David and I are kind of laughing and smiling when we're talking about some horrific moments in our life, it's
Right.
because we relate to the insanity that we
That's right.
both thinking like, oh no, I got this together. You know, so
Right.
it's just amazing. Now, David, today, if I understand correctly, you go back into the prisons and try and work with some of the inmates who were like you. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I just recently started doing that. I've been 2, 3 times now, but I've already got booked up to go again. But yeah, I've been able to go into the prisons and share my story. Same story I just shared with you. Tomorrow night, I'm speaking at to 125 guys and sharing my story. They're all ex-addicts, and they're in a program that gives them jobs, and it's a biblically based program to help them stay on the straight and narrow. So, man, God has opened up doors for me. I can't believe I'm sitting here talking to you right now, but I told God if He would give me an audience, no matter how big or small, I'll share my story because, man, I've tried to kick that dope my entire life, and one dunk in the water and I'm clean. I mean,
Yeah.
I got to tell people.
We're two blessed people. Now, folks, you want to come out to the Hear the Watchman conference, March 28th to the 31st. The 28th is registration and fellowshipping. The conference actually starts the next day. David's going to be there. Come on out, especially if you have someone, a loved one, or you have something. I mean, David and I know that it's not easy to come and talk to someone. Not easy. I mean, look at the courage it took him to come to this conference. You know, it's not easy. So come on out, meet David, talk to me. We'll get you headed down the path. Then it's up to God and it's up to you. David, thank you so much for joining us today. God bless you. What a wonderful
Thanks, Mike.
story. Wonderful story.
Thank you, Mike. I appreciate it.
Well,
Thank you.
folks, that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Watchman's Report. Again, we hope to see you in Dallas, Texas. And also, don't forget, like I always say to you on this show, there's nothing you can't do with Jesus in your heart, except nothing at all. Get out there, get busy, activate your faith. We'll see you in Dallas. God bless.